Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sister Social, a podcast in a space of healing, giving you guidance and strategies along your journey to support you, to guide you, to honestly get you through, and also recognize that you're not alone in whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're going through, growing through. I think it's so significant that I highlight some of my stories. I share my stories with my audience, the people that I love, because it's a way of me kind of showing what I've went through and being open about it. Because for the longest time, I just would be like, we're going to keep this all under wraps. We don't need to tell anyone anything. It's fine, girl. You went through it. Move on. But what I'm realizing too is that it's also a form of karma, which we think of karma as being this part of like, oh, karma's gonna get you, girl. Like, you done me wrong, she gonna get you. I don't even need to worry about it. There's also another side of karma too, where the things and the lessons that we've learned, we get to share that with people so that way they can take those lessons and learn and implement them now, or be mindful of it so that way they can avoid the situation altogether. So karma isn't always just like, I'm gonna get back at you. It's also like, well, how am I using this situation and sharing this with the world? Which one thing the today's episode that I wanted to talk about was generational traumas, which oh man, I could like already feel people on the other end of this experiencing this being like, "Oh, brother." Or is that just me? Or is that just me? Because it really be like that. You're like, damn, why did all my ancestors give me this? Why did they bestow all these things that I get to go through now? And being the generational trauma breaker, which is a lot of pressure. If you feel like you fulfill that role of being that person that's breaking a lot of the traumas in your family and forging a new path moving forward, you're not alone. Oh my gosh, there's little geese. There's like hella geese at this park. Oh yeah, you can see it in the camera. They're super cute. Um, but also don't feel like you need to take on like all the pressure of being this version, and don't feel like you need to take on the pressure and the whole world of like being this person in your family that's breaking all of these things. It's really tough. And I will say one generational trauma that I am fortunate enough that I didn't break it myself. And I give my mom kudos to this because addiction, especially for her side of the family, runs really deep. And I'm always proud of her for taking those steps forward in her sober journey. And if you haven't heard the first episode of my first season, her and I talk about that journey and that experience of her working through her alcoholism and growing, and how that really helped me evolve too, because how I see addiction in my family and how it's so interwoven with all these other things that have really, I think, makes it more difficult and more challenging on top of like the substance on your physical body, to getting to the point of like withdrawals and all of that. It's just, It's crazy. But I'm so grateful that that was something my mom faced head on. And sometimes you'll even hear in that first episode of the podcast how she was like, yeah, I feel like God or my spiritual team was like dragging me through it. Like they're like, there's no other way, you know? Um, and sometimes that's what it is, you know? There's no other way but moving forward and just keep on forging this new path that wasn't really laid out for you, which is challenging because then I feel like there's moments where you don't trust what you're doing and you start to question yourself. I don't Emotions are coming up for me right now. They're like very subtle, but I know too when she was going through her addiction, like going through her addiction, but also her journey of becoming sober. That was really helpful for me because all of the things that she was learning in the program that I was able to implement in my life and start to like deconstruct these feelings that I had because um like the serenity prayer, oh gosh, like that really helped me just being like I don't I have to just accept the things I can't change because when I try and focus on the things that I want to change but are out of my control, it just takes away from my peace. And accepting the things that you can change too, which is also powerful in itself of knowing like, I have the power to change my reality in this moment. I don't have to keep living the same story, the same cycle, which as generational breakers, it is breaking these long cycles that have been happening for so long. And that is a lot. Girl, that's a lot. So if you can connect or relate to any of that, I want you to give yourself a pat on the back, to give yourself a hug, to give yourself a little treat because you don't understand like all of the work that you've done for your family, for your timeline to keep shifting and healing and evolving. It's not easy sometimes. And I know that it feels like those moments too are like, damn, is it ever gonna let up? Am I ever gonna get a break? And I'm here to remind you, yes, I'm here to remind you that you have a community of people to lean on. You're not alone. You have me. You can always reach out to me because I get it. Even me having these emotional responses, I know that it's not easy. And I'm grateful that I've gotten to a space where I'm no longer drinking. I mean, I have a few drinks here and there for like celebrational moments or whatnot, but like not to the extent of how I used to drink. And I think a lot of us are on that journey too, where we're like, you know what? I don't need alcohol. I'm going to explore other things. Um, and also, I know with addiction, there's just so many other layers that come with it. I mean, some things that I see with addiction too is like, especially with alcohol, other substances, I don't know, but with alcohol, it's just like keeping you at this low vibration and keeping you at this point where you're just like not your most powerful self and you just feel weak. I mean, even when I was like drinking a lot, I remember just like days where I'm like, why am I doing this to my why am I doing this? I need to start to like release some of these concepts that I need to keep doing this because socially that's what everyone else is doing. That just don't make no sense. That just don't make no sense. Stop doing things because other people are doing it. That don't make it right. That don't make it okay. That don't make it something that's gonna help you along your journey. And going into like another part of this is keeping yourself small too. I think that was a generational thing that I had to break as well, along with like other people in my family. Um, but being queer in my side of the family, or at least my dad's side, I love them. They're very well intentioned. They always have my back. And I will say, like, that was always a challenging and weird space to be queer because even if I brought like mm, my partner over, that was something that instead of saying like, "Oh, this is, my boyfriend," they would be like, "Oh, this is his roommate," which I'm like, "Well, why are we doing that? That's weird. Why are we ignoring this side of me? That doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem healthy." That we all kind of know who this person is, but we're just labeling them differently so that way it's perceived differently. Ugh, that's why I don't do shit like that no more. I don't. I'm like, I'm gay. I'm gay. I wear dresses. I wear makeup. If that's a problem with you, then I don't think we need to be in each other's lives. I really, I don't, I don't have that energy anymore. I don't have the patience really either. And I think that was just like beautiful to break through that. And I felt like the leader of that because I was really like the only one that was out in my family. And this little geese right here. Okay, if you're not watching the video and you're just listening, there is literally a geese like right next to me. And they're just eating, they're just chilling. They're like eating the grass too. It's really cute. Oh, he just shit. Oh my god. Oh my god, he just shit. Yeah, this is what recording in nature is like. Sometimes we just take a shit. And that's okay. Ah, but I'm proud of myself to just standing in my light and be like, honey, I'm gay. This is me. This is the version of me. If you can't accept that, then you're really missing out on the light that I give and bring to this world. And it's really a sad reality that some queer folks have to experience that where their family just disowns them altogether. And I'm just grateful that I have a beautiful support system that guides me along my journey, that supports me, that cheers me on, that adapted and changed and was open because not a lot of people do that. Unfortunately, they continue to choose those beliefs that were taught to them and said. that they can't be this version of them, which is really sad. And if that's something you're experiencing, know that there's so many resources out there. Know that there's so many people that you can connect with. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm a resource. I'm someone you can connect with. And you're not alone. And for people that are experiencing that and aren't really aware of the queer spaces and what do people do? Well, some people will forge their own family, their chosen family, they call it, where they select, the people that they feel close to. And I think a lot of us kind of do that too, naturally, but as queer folks that have those experiences, which I'm just basing it off of what I've heard other people, they have no other choice but to pick their chosen family. So also be mindful of that, the experiences that queer folks go through in these moments. And just like, ugh, there's so many like nasty parts that still exist in the queer community just based off of like quote unquote societal norms. But even as a queer man to presenting more feminine, like I be having men that would be like, you need to shave. And I'm like, that's crazy because no, I don't. Like, who the fuck are you? Like, okay, I'm wearing a dress, have long hair, wearing makeup, and then you tell me that I need to shave? Bitch, you got some fucking nerve. For real. People have audacity, and that's where I I was like, you know what? All these other people have audacity and nerve, and they ain't even in the right. Like they ain't even in the right to be telling me this. And they still got audacity. Mama, I need to have audacity because I have the right to speak my voice and tell people and support people along their journey. And these people that be saying stuff like that, I shut them down really hard. Because I'm a generational trauma breaker. I'm just cool like that. I got it like that. Oh my gosh. I just got it like that. Because that's another thing too, breaking people pleasing tendencies. Um, if you're a recovering people pleaser, that I can relate to 100,000%. But I think that's where I also think that's generational, like, okay, I need to keep people happy so that way I can keep myself safe. Like if I put too big of a target on me, then that's gonna make me too seen, too open, like I can't hold firm boundaries because if that if I do that, then I'm gonna get put in harm's way. So I feel like that's where my people pleasing tendencies formed, at least in my generational stuff, like interacting in a way where I'm like, okay, I need to avoid any like big responses from someone because then that means I'm not safe anymore and then I have to like retreat. Ah, damn. People pleasing tendencies can go so deep. Ah. And there's so many like at least layers for me that I've processed with that. For example, like queer identity. If you listen to previous episodes of the podcast, I talk about like in elementary school too. I was heavily bullied for being queer, and it wasn't even like I was out. It was just because my voice was different. And that was a lesson in itself of me suppressing my voice in order to keep myself safe, which I know that was the universe like really challenging me in these moments right now where I'm like, my voice is valuable and I'm never, ever, ever going to dim it, or I'm never going to stop sharing my voice because I've done that for so long, which I talk about in the episode Speaking Your Truth. If you haven't listened to that, go check it out. But it feels like all of these things are just coming together and just like letting them go so easily, so effortlessly. They're no longer mine to hold on to. I don't need to keep choosing this same narrative. I don't need to be playing by these rules that don't even make sense in the first place. I don't need to be doing anything that's putting someone else's happiness before mine. Okay, I feel called to take a moment to just speak some gratitude because I'm getting really emotional. So, if you feel called to do this too, I invite you to join me. Get in a comfortable seat. You can sit up, you can lay down. If you're driving, save this for later. Or actually, just make sure you don't close your eyes. You can say your gratitude out loud. But whenever you're ready, you start focusing in on your breath, taking those intentional breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And if you're crying like me and you can't breathe out of your nose, you can just do it in through your mouth, out through your mouth. So again, let's take a deep breath in, holding it at the top, and release out the mouth. One more time, taking an inhale, holding it at the top, and release, exhale. And if you feel called to, I want you to gently close your eyes. Continue to take these intentional breaths. And if you feel called to, I want you to give yourself a hug in this moment while we say our affirmations of gratitude. I'm so grateful for all the growth that I've done. I am so proud of the person that I am today. There's nowhere I have to be but in this moment. It's so easy for me to release. It's so easy for me to choose peace. I am so grateful for all the growth that I've done. I am so proud of the person that I am. It wasn't easy, but why did I make it look so easy? I have the strength to keep moving forward. I am such a powerful human being. It's so easy for me to show up for myself. am so grateful. I am so grateful. I am so grateful. Thank you, universe. I'm grateful for all these moments, all these lessons, and all these opportunities to evolve into my most abundant and higher self. I love you. Are you ready? Just notice how your body is feeling right now after experiencing all this acknowledgement, this gratitude. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, release your arms, move your body side to side. Girl, I needed that. And I hope that's something that helped you too. Because it's so easy to keep focusing on moving forward, being this version of you, taking the steps of like evolving. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I feel called to mention it again. Don't always focus on healing and growing and improving. Well, yes, that's part of our journey here. It's also part of our journey, though, to just accept where we are in our journey. We're not this big project that we need to fix. We're not something that needs to keep going through the process of elevating and all of that. I mean, yes, we want to do that. That's part of the goal. We want to keep evolving, growing. So that way, our children don't have to, or maybe not just children, but the people that come after us don't have to do all of this work. But I want you to just take a moment and just acknowledge the version of you that you are right now and just be happy with that version. Because I know I was talking about, dimming my light, and another thing too was like, I feel like, especially back then, like erasing kind of like cultural things and suppressing like things that were different from American culture, which, if you didn't know, my dad's side, we're Mexican. Yeah. Yeah. And one experience that I've learned about my dad was like, he was fluent in Spanish, girlfriend. He was able to speak Spanish as a kid, and I wrote, I guess like his school asked my grandparents to have him stop speaking Spanish and only speak English in the home because they couldn't understand his accent and he was behind in English, which, if I'm not mistaken, that term is called assimilation, which back in the day, that was pretty much what happened to a lot of Mexican people that were living in the United States. They were kind of taught, like, oh, this is the way you have to live. You need to learn these skills, and then anything else has to go away. Like you can't engage in that, which was really fucked up. Um, and that was something that happened to my dad, at least, where they told him to stop speaking Spanish. And now he can't even speak Spanish, which is erasing our connection with our culture too. and our family, like the family members that only speak Spanish. Girl, how are we supposed to connect with them, learn our history, you know? So that's where I released limiting belief of, oh, I never learned Spanish as a kid, or oh, like I only picked up some words from my grandparents, but that was it. I was like, no, baby, I'm gonna learn this. And I did. And I'm still learning, and there's still areas to improve. But yeah, I think that was something too. Like, oh, I gotta hide these parts of me so that way I'm camouflaged. And I just had to break that. I feel like I recently broken through that, especially with like posting more on social media and stuff. Like that was just so challenging for me. And now it's just so easy. I'm like, oh, baby, I'm gonna post this, and I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn because I don't think this is really. I don't know. This might be a generational thing, but I also think this is just cultural, where like having things perfect, right? Like, oh, everything needs to be exactly how I envisioned it, or exactly fitting this criteria, which I think is more cultural, like especially with the school system of like, oh, you know, you need to fulfill this certain standard, and there was no really wiggle room to like explore these different versions of you, you know, or like express yourself, which I hope that the education system could evolve in that space. But anyways, if you identify as a perfectionist, girl, let it go. I challenge you to take a moment to break this pattern by creating something that's not perfect at all. Make errors, make mistakes. If you need to intentionally do it, do it. And also, like, start to notice where it stems from in your body, because your body is communicating to you in these moments too. And if you're challenging yourself by breaking these patterns too, that you've been told, oh, I need to live this certain way, but then you break it, what does that first initial thing feel like? I want you to ask yourself that. When I challenged this, when I broke this, when I faced it and said, I'm going to choose a different path, how did you feel? Did your body have a response to that? Was there anything that you were feeling in your body that was going off? I'll give an example for me. When I came out as queer, I think, when was it? I was in college, so it was like probably the first semester. Posted on Facebook. I'm being drawn to the beginning of the year, so I'm assuming that's when it happened. But when that happened, I remember when I was speaking my truth for the first time, my body was literally shaking. My whole body was like visceral, like, like this is so uncomfortable for me. I feel so not okay. Oh my God. It was just crazy, that experience that I was having. And I, well, the more and more I like spoke my truth was like the easier it became to like not have those bodily responses. But I think that was my body's way of being like, oh my God, you're not safe. And what's probably kept me in those cycles of being like, are you sure about this? Like, if there's no going back. Like, I felt like, you know, those like old school cars when they like warm up and they're like that's literally what my body was doing, and it was crazy. So that I feel like was just my foundation being totally like run through. You know, my foundation was like, oh bitch, because I remember feeling it more in my stomach, which when we think of our chakras, which if you're not familiar, we have these energy centers starting at the base of our spine, which is our root, and then it builds up all the way to our crown. And honestly, there's other articles that present that there's even chakras above our body too, which I think is really cool. But each energy center has a different reason of like why it activates or why it gets overactive or underactive. So I think in that case, I feel drawn to my root. Like my root was just like shaking in fear, which also someone that, oh, I think this was my business coach actually. She made the relation to like Maslow's hierarchy, comparing it to the similarities of the chakras, which if you're not aware of Maslow's hierarchy, it's a psychological term which basically is like a pyramid shape going from like our needs need to get met starting at the basic fundamental thing of like food, shelter, water. And then we climb up this hierarchy to get to the top of the triangle, which is self actualization, which your most, you know, realized version of yourself. Like you're feeling good in your body. No, that's definitely not the definition. You feel really good in your body. But I will link some articles actually to the YouTube or to the YouTube description and to the podcast description because it's interesting that these parallels are made about those two things where my root was being really shaken, which is related to fear and feeling unsafe. So that was just being shaken and rocked to its core. But now, and you might have heard in the previous episode, like standing in my power too has been like so much easier for me throughout these years where I'm like, baby girl, I'm like, you really can't tell me who the fuck I am. Like, you can't tell me, yeah, that. Like, I would let things like that shake me. But now I'm like, girl, do you even know my story? Like, do you even know who I am? No, I didn't think so. So you better move back because you don't know me like that. Wait, isn't that a ludicrous song? You don't know me like that. Yeah. Beep, beep, whoop, whoop. Why are you all in my ear? Anyways, generational traumas. I hope that you're discovering some of your generational stuff that you've broken or can relate to some of the things that I'm discussing about generational traumas that have come up for me. And just trusting that you're exactly where you're meant to be. And you don't need to do all of it. You really don't. You really don't, babe. Don't feel like you need to do all of this yourself. You're not alone. There's so many resources. It just takes time and energy to invest in it. So if you need to, seek out a therapist. If you need to, seek out different forms of therapy. I remember I did somatic therapy, and truthfully, that was inspiring for my own journey of starting my own business and using those somatic techniques in my practice as well. But that was like so beneficial too on my journey. So explore different things and see what works best for you. You never know until you try. And the more and more that you put yourself in spaces where you've never been before, you start to get more in tune with your intuition and trusting, like, oh, this feels right in my body. Like, this feels like a yes. Or, oh, no, this does not feel good. I'm not about to do this. Which I had that the other day too happen where I'm like, oh, I already, like, my intuition comes through clairaudiently, which, if you're not familiar, is you hear messages even like in your head. So, for example, I might hear words, phrases. I might actually hear songs that come up. So, those are ways that my clairaudient comes up. And it's not always internally, sometimes it's externally that we experience some of those clairaudient things. So, for example, if we're talking about something that's really on the point, really like giving us clarity, guidance, all of that, we might hear like a chime from our phone, or we might hear a little ring from a distance. We might hear a car horn. I've been hearing car horns, like the car alarms, happen all the time. Actually, that's kind of what guided me this way. I was walking from one end of the park and I was like, I wonder where I'm going to go. And then I heard a car alarm. And I'm like, I'm going to go that way. And then I found this beautiful tree. So there's so many ways that clairaudience can come through. Sometimes too, I'll hear like a repeated phrase outside of my body where it would be like, oh, on the TV they said this, but then on, like, in music it said the same exact phrase and then someone repeated it to me. So you'll start to notice those things first once you stop labeling them as coincidence. It's not a coincidence. That that shit's real. It, like, you can't tell me otherwise. That's just what I choose to believe. If you choose something different, that's not you, girl. Secondly, take the time to listen and also take the time to go inward. We expect, the universe to give us some of these symbols and signs, but we're not really putting in the energy to listen in the first place and go inward and see what's coming up. And thirdly, I will say this to the fucking day I die: follow the intuition, follow the guidance, which I'm already hearing in my head, like, girl, practice what you preach, because there is some stuff. It takes time. I'm at my own divine timing universe, okay? I'm getting there. I'm gonna do what I need to do and I'm gonna get there, okay? But follow the guidance and trust it and keep moving forward. Trust yourself, trust the guidance that comes up. I'm going to start wrapping up this episode of the podcast. I appreciate y'all for joining this episode. I hope that you've learned and was able to process some of your generational stuff and know that it takes time. Remember, this has been happening for generations. It's probably still happening. And when breaking that history, it's gonna be a little challenging. It might be easy too. Who knows? Because it's time to change the ways that we're living in this world for the better. And I think one of those things is to stop suppressing our authentic voice in ways that aren't isn't harmful to other people by suppressing their voices. We're getting a little political today because if you don't know, we're going to be voting soon and making these really big decisions for the betterment, I'm hoping, for our society and the world that we're living in. Because right now, it's not really reflecting the beauty that humanity has. You being able to speak your voice, vote, taking the time to use this right that you have to vote and make changes in the world, and not suppressing other people's voices throughout the process and using hate. We don't need to do all of that. We don't. And it's really sad that it's kind of gotten to that point. I mean, even for me presenting the way that I do in more of like a conservative space, I get looks all the time, and it's really sad that sometimes I need to question, like, am I safe right now? Like, is someone going to harm me, you know? And moving forward, I think we need to all be mindful of, like, okay, we're taking the steps to move forward as a society and as a human race in general. Like, we cannot be doing this anymore, especially if we want our children to live a different life that we know that they deserve to live. These children do not need to be living in the environments that they live in right now. I'm hopeful that we can make those changes together as a society and as a people moving forward. So let's break that as a generational trauma, honey. Let's break it. It's time. So remember, speak your choice with love, compassion, and I thank you again for supporting me on this podcast and supporting me throughout my journey and listening to my experiences. And I hope again that this has helped you. I love y'all. I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day. Bye.